This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
China gears up to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the founding of its Communist Party. We bring you details of a new multi-billion-dollar UN peacekeeping operation for the next year. And underprivileged children in Nigeria get platform to discuss issues affecting them. Hello and welcome. You're watching Africa Live. We're coming to live from Nairobi. I'm Hannah Viviers. Here are more stories making headlines this hour. Businesses in South Africa brace for lower returns after COVID-19 restrictions are tightened again. And a woman in Uganda rallies her community to recycle plastic waste to aid environment conservation efforts. We'll begin with developments in China, where the World Health Organization has officially granted the country a malaria-free certification. There were some 30 million malaria cases in China in the 1940s, with 300,000 fatalities. The country began fighting the disease back in the 1950s and has registered no cases from 2017 onward. China is the first country in the WHO Western Pacific region to be awarded the certificate, making it the 40th in the world. Beijing has responded saying it will stick to its commitment to devote itself to making greater contributions to global health. China is preparing to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the founding of its Communist Party. General Secretary of the CPC Central Committee, Xi Jinping, who's also the country's president, will address the event at Beijing's Tiananmen Square on Thursday. Our reporter Sen Zhuan has more.
So the big day is tomorrow. Chinese President Xi Jinping will speak at the celebration on Thursday. In addition to that, I want to give you a bigger context to understand what the celebration really means. So there are actually 8 aspects of the CPC centenary celebration. So it's the big celebration on July 1st. So a lot going on in the country. Some already took place throughout the year. In addition to that, some are still going on throughout the year. By June 2021, more than 95 million CPC party members in China. So that's observing an increase of 3.5% increase in comparison to 2019. And female taking up nearly 29% of the party member, and also minor and ethnic groups taking up 7.5%. It's very interesting on a group range. So the age range that has the most party member is actually the individuals older than 61, that's nearly 27 million people. And then the second is actually the youngest below 30 years old, it's actually nearly 13 million. And then the third age group is actually 31 to 35 years old, that's around 11 million. And also the primary level organizations stand at 4.8 million and is an increase of nearly 4% in comparison to 2019.
The Communist Party of China was awarded 29 outstanding members ahead of the centenary. The individuals received the party's highest honor, the July 1st Medal, for their exceptional contributions to the party and country. Let's hear what some Chinese people are saying about this.
In
the past century, the CPC has had a lot of notable members. The 29 medal recipients are only a handful of representatives. And we can see among the recipients, many come from the grassroots level that truly demonstrate the CPC's mission of serving the people.
I had always thought of Lan Tianye, one of the recipients, as a longtime artist, but I only found out yesterday that he had long served the party before 1949. That surprised me and I was very touched. There are only 29 recipients, but they represent the tens of millions of CPC members. We are what we are today thanks to all of their contributions.
I think they're the most adorable people. I see them as role models, and I'd like to make contributions in my own life.
We should be grateful for what they did. It hasn't been easy for China to become what it is today. Step by step, over all those years, we have the life we have today, all because of these leaders in their professions, because of the party members' contributions. I'm very grateful.
The Communist Party of China has come a long way since its founding in 1921 and says it never stops learning, growing, and contributing. Zhang Dan has more.
In its modern history, China had endured many foreign invasions. During times of war and revolution, the CPC reached out to global organizations such as the Communist International and the Communist Party of the Soviet Union in a bid to bring about a successful Chinese revolution, victory in the anti-fascist war, and to win peace for China and the world. And peace has long been the CPC's top priority. In the 1950s, the party initiated the 5 principles of peaceful coexistence, including mutual respect for sovereignty and territorial integrity. These 5 principles were later set as the basis for Asian and African countries to establish friendship and cooperation at the 1955 Bandung Conference in Indonesia. Then Chinese Premier Zhou Enlai, who was also foreign minister, attended the meeting and put forward the resounding principle of seeking common ground while shelving differences. And the People's Republic of China has never stopped trying to make its voice heard. In 1971, China resumed its legal seat in the United Nations. 30 years later, China officially joined the World Trade Organization and gradually opened up its enormous market and attracted massive foreign investment. And since the 18th National Congress of the CPC in late 2012, China has been engaging even more actively with the world. Following the outbreak of the coronavirus pandemic in late 2019, China has been offering a helping hand to countries in need. Under the guidance of the Communist Party of China, and thanks to the solidarity of its people, China has been able to largely contain the virus and rebound from its economic impact. And as the world witnessed uneven distributions of vaccines, China, as one of the biggest vaccine manufacturers, extended its helping hand. Apart from vaccinating its own people, China has provided aid to more than 80 countries and 4 international organizations. It's also exported vaccines to more than 40 countries, while working with more than 10 nations in vaccine research, development, and production. The country is providing an initial batch of 10 million doses to the global program COVAX. Overall, it has sent more than 350 million doses of its COVID vaccines overseas. The pandemic has made it clear that nobody is safe until everybody is safe. It's a lesson that can be easily applied to climate change as well. Chinese President Xi Jinping, also the General Secretary of the CPC Central Committee, has called for joint efforts in battling climate change at a Global Leaders Summit on Climate in April.
We need to work on the basis of international law, follow the principle of equity and justice, and focus on effective actions. We need to uphold the UN-centered international system. We need to comply with the UN framework on climate change and the Paris Agreement, and strive to deliver on the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals.
China says it aims to peak carbon emissions by 2030 and achieve carbon neutrality by 2060, and the commitments are based on solid achievements in carbon reduction. The country's carbon intensity has dropped by 48.1% by the end of 2019 from the 2005 level. From 2012 to 2019, China's GDP grew by an annual average of 7%, while the energy consumed to achieve this only increased by an annual average of 2.8%. Apart from climate goals, China has also been promoting what it calls high-quality cooperation of mutual benefits. President Xi proposed the Belt and Road Initiative in 2013. The massive program aims to connect Asia, Africa, and Europe via land and maritime networks. The goal is to improve regional integration, increase trade, and stimulate economic growth. So far, over 170 countries and international organizations had signed over 200 agreements with China under the Belt and Road.
I have noted on various occasions that the Belt and Road Initiative is a public road open to all, not a private path owned by one single party. All interested countries are welcome to take part in the cooperation and share its benefits. Belt and Road Cooperation pursues development, aims for mutual benefits, and conveys a message of hope.
The program goes along with President Xi's proposal to build a community with a shared future for mankind. Zhang Dan, CGTN.
Earlier, we spoke with Victoria Panova, the vice president of the Far Eastern Federal University in Russia. She said the CBC has played an active role in the fight against COVID-19 and also spoke about China-Russia relations.
What is no less important is the economic strength and the fact that CPC as a driver for the Chinese society was among their factors that emboldened Chinese people to stand together and to actually overcome this trouble and to show very good results. CPC could be seen as a driver of Chinese development, of peaceful, strong Chinese state, and as an actor, as an independent sovereign actor and responsible actor, China contributes to stability and prosperity of the global development. And I think this could be, at least in some percentage, could be attributed to CPC. It's consolidation of Chinese people, and it's the role it plays internally for the country. We're having unprecedented times of friendship between Russia and China. I would like to wish that this friendship lasts indefinitely, so not just long, but indefinitely, and only strengthens with time. I'm wishing Chinese people to, of course, remain resolute, strong, healthy, and open to the world for diversity, and China is supporting this as one of the core principles of international relations for peaceful development and for sustainability. I think this is very important.
Zambians have congratulated China ahead of the centenary celebrations of the Communist Party of China. They've also praised China for its achievements under the leadership of the CBC.
The CPC is regarded worldwide as the biggest and most important organization leading masses and masses of people. But I think what is unique about the achievements of the CPC is the miracle explained by the statistics that come out of China. You're talking about 100 million people out of poverty. Those, by statistics of other nations, those are a couple of nations completely taken out of poverty. That's not a mean achievement. It's tremendous. It's something that blows your mind just to think about what did China do just to make sure they have this great success of building a moderately prosperous society.
In the late 1930s, many educated young Chinese people went to Yan'an in the northwestern province of Shanxi, and their presence had a great impact. To bring the era back to life, students from the Lixun Institute of Arts are having an opera from that time. Xu Zhouan has the details.
Drought, illiteracy and poverty. That might be your first impressions of northern Shanxi province if you had visited during the early 20th century. But despite that, hundreds of thousands of well-educated young Chinese flooded into this barren land during the late 1930s.
A simple answer is that the Chinese communists were based here aiming to create a brand new society, while the rest of the country was ruled by Kuomintang, or the nationalists. But this couldn't entirely explain why the young people came. For further explanations, let's take a look at this photo.
It's from a Chinese opera called Bai Mao Nu, or The White-Haired Girl. It tells a story from that period of how a peasant's young daughter, tortured by a merciless landlord, and escaped into the mountains. In the end, she was saved by the Communist Army.
It was so captivating that when it was performed for the frontline troops, a young soldier in the audience couldn't control his anger towards the landlord on the stage and opened fire with his rifle towards the actor. Fortunately, he missed. The incident may sound a bit terrifying, but it showed how the performance accurately captured the pain felt by the peasant class during the time and an urgent need for change. But how do you reform a region where 99% of the population are illiterate? Well, you teach them to read. Before the communists came, there was only one primary school per 12,000 people, with no middle school. But then, as you see, classes are offered in many places in Yan'an. And besides these classes, you may also encounter a kind-hearted teacher in your neighborhood who would like to teach you single Chinese characters, like cow or new in Chinese. And write that character on a small piece of paper and stick that paper on the entrance of a cowshed so that you can look at it every day.
In 1936, the first phase of a civil war between the communists and the Kuomintang was over. But the Red Army still faced the challenge of feeding themselves. They refused to exploit farmers like the landlord class did, so they began to farm and grow food themselves.
Soldiers were sent to reclaim the wasteland, and the party cadres, even including the top leaders of the party, all joined the local people's physical labor.
All these showcased the social reforms and equality in Yan'an, which appealed to the country's younger generations.
If all these still don't answer for you the question I raised at the beginning of the video, I suggest you to read a book written by American journalist Edgar Snow, Red Star over China. Edgar spent months in Yan'an talking to a lot of party leaders, local residents and soldiers. In this book he said, "I felt so strongly the vibrant hope and the unbeatable strength of mankind."
Later, the Roosevelt administration in the US sent an army observation group to Yan'an known as the Dixie Mission. One of the observers said that the US should work with forces opposing the nationalists, such as the communists. For the communists themselves, Yan'an has become an important legacy in their revolutionary history, and stories continue to inspire today's young people.
80 years ago, Yan'an was a star city, and today it still is.
Time for us to take a short break. When we return, we bring you details of a new multi-billion-dollar UN peacekeeping operation for next year. And underprivileged children in Nigeria get platformed to discuss issues affecting them.
Nigeria is my home. 160 million vibrant, ambitious individuals constantly seeking the perfect self-expression. It is these people who inspired me to be that person that is seen, to be a voice that is heard, and ultimately to be the anchor that I am. I have to tap in, tune in, and turn on the very best qualities within me to deliver the news. I'm Richard Nta, an anchor for CGTN.
Welcome back. Well, the UN has finalized a deal on a new multi-billion-dollar peacekeeping budget for the next year. It came a day before the June 30th deadline. The agreement averts what would have been a shutdown of all 12 peacekeeping missions around the world. Reporting from New York, here's our correspondent, Liling Tan.
Down to the final hours, a deal to greenlight a new $6 billion peacekeeping budget was reached and ready for the UN General Assembly to formalize. Now, it seems that just a day before a June 30th deadline was set to expire, UN member nations managed to overcome their differences to keep peacekeeping operations running for the year starting July 1st and avert what could have been a major crisis.
Based on the scenario, we will have the necessary spending authority from July 1st without any operational shutdowns, which is good news. Curtailment of operations, as you know, will have limited the ability of the mission to implement their mandates, including, for example, supporting countries in COVID response, protection of civilians, and other critical missions activities.
It is unclear what held up the deal, but various reports cited issues around negotiation procedures and logistics, as well as disagreement between China and Western nations. The U.S. accounts for the largest share of the UN peacekeeping budget at nearly 28%, followed by China at slightly over 15%. And before the deal was finalized, UN headquarters had advised its peacekeeping missions to put in place contingency plans in the event that no agreement was reached in time. Such a scenario would have meant that UN money would only go toward safeguarding UN assets and protecting UN staff and peacekeepers on the ground. Liling Tan, CGTN, New York.
It's the second week of the UN Human Rights Council meeting. The Council is holding a dialogue on trafficking in persons, especially women and children. Tunisia is among the African countries battling various forms of human trafficking, but experts say the North African state has become a transit point for traffickers of men, women, and children. Adnan Shawashi reports.
Tunisian authorities called for the implementation of a national strategy to fight against child trafficking. Experts assert that this phenomenon has spread since the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic in the North African country.
The current situation, where many children are exploited by unscrupulous adults, is very alarming, and we're always on the alert. Fighting child trafficking is the responsibility of the government, the family, and civil society. Once they leave school, it's easy for criminals to use these children who are under the age of 16.
The Ministry of Women, Family, Child and Elderly Affairs revealed that women and young girls are the most at risk of becoming victims of trafficking in Tunisia. In fact, thousands of Tunisian women and girls are forced to work as domestic servants due to their deplorable social and economic situation.
The phenomenon of domestic servitude is a form of human trafficking. Our objective is to empower women and girls in rural areas so that they are not forced to work as servants while they could have a better life. We encourage them to report any trafficking attempts.
Tunisia is also fighting domestic and international criminal networks which are responsible for human trafficking and migrant smuggling in the Mediterranean region.
Some local and foreign trafficking networks are taking advantage of irregular migration flows. We know the existence of these criminal groups which view human trafficking as a business and human beings as goods.
Tunisian President Kais Saied declared that all slavery-like practices, especially human trafficking, will be criminalized.
The National Anti-Human Trafficking Commission revealed that it had recorded more than 1,400 cases of human trafficking in 2020. Statistics also showed that half of the victims are women, children, and undocumented migrants. Adnan Shawashi, CGTN, Tunis.
16 countries pledged to support Libya's unity government at the most recent Berlin conference. However, while they expressed commitment to assisting Libya hold elections in December and withdraw foreign fighters, no specific plan has yet been agreed upon. Our correspondent Adel El-Marouchi has been closely following ongoing developments regarding Libya. Here is his latest report.
16 nations and 4 international organizations met in Berlin last week to discuss the Libyan political transition. They've confirmed their support to the current interim executive authority and urged Libyans to implement the UN-led ceasefire agreement reached in October 2020. Foreign ministers from all countries involved in Libya have also insisted that the Libyan elections must take place in December.
Berlin, too, surpasses the importance of the first Berlin conference held last year. It builds over the progress of the first meeting. It reaffirms the international community's commitment towards Libya. More importantly, it's the first time Libya was present as a unified government. Last year, the division prevented Libyans from having a voice in such a gathering.
While the broad headlines of the Berlin II conference are plausible, the meeting has not produced an applicable plan. Unlike what the unity government had hoped for, this international gathering failed to produce a timeline for unifying the nation's divided military forces or for the exit of foreign fighters.
I mean, majority of the Libyan people are united in not accepting foreign forces and mercenaries in their land, and not accepting that their sovereignty is lost. I'm having a hard time being optimistic because I don't see a serious recognition on behalf of the international community of the real problem.
In Berlin, nations agreed that there should be a gradual withdrawal of foreign fighters to maintain the current balance of power. The 16 nations invested in the Libyan crisis say they will avoid meddling in Libya's domestic affairs and respect the nation's sovereignty. In reality, nothing much has changed since the first Berlin conference. Another agreement was inked on paper. The absence of answers for fundamental issues facing Libya remains. Libya and the international community know what the country needs to end its decade-long crisis, yet no one says when these actions will be taken. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
Kenya is expecting to receive the first batch of about 13 million COVID-19 vaccine shots from Johnson & Johnson in August. According to President Uhuru Kenyatta, the country has struck a deal to get the shots for the price of 10 million doses. The president says the single-shot vaccine will help to speed up the country's vaccination drive. Like other nations on the African continent, Kenya has struggled to secure vaccines for its citizens. Health Ministry data indicates that about 1 million Kenyans out of 47 million have had a first jab and at least 300,000 are fully vaccinated. Meanwhile, the World Bank has approved $130 million of additional funds to help Kenya buy more vaccines.
We have already ordered 10 million vaccines from Johnson & Johnson, with the first consignment arriving in Kenya in August of 2021. But in the process of negotiating with this company, we also have managed to get a lower price. For the price of 10 million vaccines, we will be able to have them deliver 13 million doses. Using these vaccines and others in the pipeline, this is how we will vaccinate over 10 million Kenyans by Christmas of 2021 and 26 million Kenyans by the end of 2022.
Tanzania says it has 100 COVID-19 hospital patients in its third wave. This is the first coronavirus data the country has released in over a year. President Samia Suluhu Hassan says 70 patients are in critical condition and on ventilators. CGTN's Daniel Kuja reports.
After more than a year, Tanzania has released data on COVID-19 patients in the country.
If you look at the data, it's not many patients, but we have to take precautions so the number does not increase. So we decided to align with what the rest of the world is doing and get vaccines.
Tanzania last released COVID-19 data in April 2020. After that, then President John Magufuli's administration denied the virus was present in the country. A committee of experts on COVID-19 set up by Tanzania's new president, Samia Suluhu Hassan, recommended a change in handling the pandemic. It urged that official figures on the spread of the disease in the country be shared and also called for vaccines to be made available. The Tanzanian government says it is processing a $470 million loan from the World Bank to help combat the pandemic. Half of the money will be used to purchase COVID-19 vaccines, while the other half will be used to bail out sectors that have been severely hit by the pandemic. The president has also confirmed that Tanzania has already registered for the COVAX facility package. The vaccines will be voluntary to give citizens the opportunity to choose what is best for them. No specific dates for the rollout have been given.
Now our experts are working on deciding which vaccine we should import and how. We can have two doors, those who are willing to buy the vaccine commercially and those who will be vaccinated by the government.
President Samia has handled the pandemic differently from her predecessor Magufuli, who died in March. Her decision to publish hospitalization numbers and acquire vaccines sets Tanzania on a path more in line with the rest of the world. Daniel Kijo, CGTN, Dar es Salaam.
West African Regional Bloc ECOWAS and other partners have launched a parliamentary-style discussion forum for children who live on the streets. The intervention serves as a voice for deprived and abandoned children in the region. With more details of that initiative, here is CGTN's Kelechi Emekelam.
I'm sorry. Children right now, as I speak to you, they sleep with animals at abattoirs because they don't have anywhere to sleep. And there's very little we can do.
Pains of a compassionate child rights activist compelled to bring change to a situation that's long troubled Nigeria and West Africa. Zainab Khalil set up Yadai, a center that focuses on the rehabilitation of children who are abandoned, many that are victims of abuse or child labor. The center recently partnered with the ECOWAS Parliament and UNICEF to launch the Street Children Parliament, an initiative aimed at giving street children a voice.
And what we intend doing is drawing the attention of the government, bringing the children, let them tell their story, giving them a louder voice. And when you give them a louder voice, you now draw the attention of government to do the needful. And it was as a result of that that we even drew ECOWAS.
The International Labour Organization's 2017 report showed an estimated 168 million children globally are engaged in child labor. 15 million of them are in Nigeria, the highest number of working children in West Africa. In the face of issues like abject poverty and Islamist insurgency, children are forced into the streets to fend for themselves and their families.
So you find children uncared for, not by the mother, not by the father. And what do you expect them to do? They go to the street to find a way of sustaining themselves. Or are you talking about the insurgency? You see IDP camps all over the place. You know, internal displaced persons all over the place. And from there, these children move to the street because they have to survive.
Child rights activists say the network of support for children is still very weak in West Africa, and it will take more than establishing a street children parliament to close the gaps. Governments would need to enforce laws and policies geared towards upholding the rights and safety of children. Kelechi Emekelam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
Well, here's a quick reminder of our top stories. The World Health Organization has officially granted China a malaria-free certification. The country began fighting the disease in the 1950s and has registered no cases from 2017 onward. China is the first country in the WHO Western Pacific region to be awarded this certificate, making it the 40th in the world. The UN has finalized a deal on a new multi-billion-dollar peacekeeping budget for the next year. It came a day before the June 30th deadline. The agreement averts what would have been a shutdown of all 12 peacekeeping missions around the world. And Kenya is expecting to receive the first batch of about 13 million COVID-19 vaccine shots from Johnson & Johnson in August. According to President Uhuru Kenyatta, the country has struck a deal to get the shots for the price of 10 million doses. Kenyatta says the single-shot vaccine will help to speed up the country's vaccination drive. And those were your top stories for this hour. Let's now take a short break and return your business news, including businesses in South Africa brace for lower returns as COVID-19 restrictions are tightened again.
There's more to this place than just glorious landscapes. There's more to it than just, say, Table Mountain or glorious, endless salt flats. There's more to it than countries that are home to some of the deepest mines in the world. There is so much more to this place, even if it is home to some of the finest diamonds on the planet. It is the sheer diversity of the people who call Southern Africa home and the relentless drive to make it a better place that make it so special. we know that because this too is home. No one knows Southern Africa like we do. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
It's time now for the business news. South Africa has tightened lockdown restrictions as new COVID-19 cases continue rising. But the move has dampened rebounding business confidence at a time when the country is still trying to recover to pre-pandemic levels. CGTN's Angela Coppola reports.
South African authorities have confirmed that the Delta variant is responsible for many of the new infections in KwaZulu-Natal and the third wave of infections in Gauteng province.
These viruses need to continue mutating to try to evade the immune responses that's been targeted against the virus so that it can continue surviving and continue propagating essentially. So that is when you have these mutations which are basically making the virus relatively resistant to the antibody that is targeting specific proteins that are on the surface, which otherwise would be able to get rid of the virus.
As the variant spread, authorities have opened hundreds of vaccination sites. 58 of those are targeting the mining sector and currently going through the registration process.
We have now 5 sites that are vaccinating. The first site was on the 24th of May in the Platinum Belt. And I think we are at least satisfied that we have got something in Platinum, in the Northwest Province, which has the largest number of mine workers. We also have 2 sites in the coal sector, and we also have 2 other sites in the gold sector.
South Africa, like many other African countries, has suffered from a shortage of vaccines.
The vaccine shortage has not had as big an impact on us as the fact that our sites had not yet been approved. So we hope that, with more sites being approved, the issue of vaccine shortage will not be an issue, and it means we can really ramp up on the side of there's more sites, but there's also more vaccines available.
On a broader level, it's been suggested that experts will think differently about vaccines in future.
It's unlikely that we're going to be able to prevent resurgences from taking place or to stop the virus from circulating. In fact, elimination of this virus is no longer an option in the immediate future, and certainly not during the course of our lifetimes.
As the country moves into that next level of lockdown, there's some questions being asked about whether all the measures and restrictions that have been put in place are actually going to make a difference. The bottom line is we need vaccines, we need vaccinations, and they need to be done quickly. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Meanwhile, South Africa has finally initiated the switch from analog to digital broadcasting transmissions. In 2005, the International Telecommunications Union declared that countries in Africa and other regions should be encouraged to migrate to a digital television platform. South Africa has fallen behind and is only catching up this year. More on this story from CGTN's Sumitra Naidu.
South Africa missed the 2015 deadline set by the International Communications Union to complete the transition from analog to digital terrestrial television. This project has been plagued by delays, but it now seems to be moving along.
Since February up until, let's say, the end of May, we've switched off over 76 low power and high power sites. We are busy now with the Northern Cape. We are busy with the Limpopo, and we are also busy with the Northwest as well as Mpumalanga.
Earlier this year, President Cyril Ramaphosa announced in his State of the Nation address that the move to digital will be completed in all 9 provinces by March 2022.
So essentially, South Africa is, as we all know, way behind in the digital migration. The mobile networks haven't got sufficient spectrum, especially for a country like South Africa, to roll out advanced networks and, in fact, to roll out data at costs that South Africans can afford.
Mobile companies are desperately awaiting the move as it will free up spectrum.
That spectrum to be allocated to other things, most notably the mobile networks, and allow them to start rolling out 4G and 5G, in very low frequencies where television exists. So it's of paramount importance that South Africa speeds that up and gets the job done across the country in as short a possible time.
But the move to digital in a country like South Africa will leave millions unable to access TV networks. The South African Post Office is now making set-top boxes available to those that qualify.
USASA is ensuring that there's the voucher system that is given to people so that they can get the set-top boxes. Centec is doing the physical, switch off, as in you go to a site, and then the SAPC is basically giving the authorization to say, yes, this site now can be switched off because we think we will not lose audiences. Remember, on our side as the broadcaster, we don't want to lose our audiences.
Households receiving social grants or earning less than $225 per month will get set-top boxes at no cost. Sumitra Naidu, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
China has invested at least $20 billion in infrastructure projects in Egypt through the HSBC Bank. That's according to the lender's CEO, Todd Wilcox. Infrastructure projects have been a priority for Egypt's government since President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi took office in June of 2014. And as CGTN's Yasser Hakim reports, China is playing a vital role in the development of these projects.
A major rebuilding process began in Egypt back in 2016, less than 2 years after President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi came to office. The development of new cities, roads, upgrading the transportation system, and the rehabilitation of the Suez Canal economic zones were amongst the main projects in the plan. And China has been an integral part in this overhaul, investing more than $20 billion on infrastructure alone in the North African state.
For the productive part, you can consider the Teide area. It's the economic Chinese area in the Suez axis. And actually it has many companies and many industries, including car industries, steel industries, other energy-related industries, and so on. China has some other projects other than Teide, the one in Aswan for the energy production, the electric grid project.
Chinese companies are building a $3 billion business district at the new capital, with its iconic tower set to become the highest in Africa. Beijing is also leading construction works for a number of railway lines, electric trains, and buses for public transport. Chinese officials had always commended Egypt's efforts to develop its solid foundations.
I think the last 3 years, Egypt has excellent conditions. You have very good infrastructure, like you have sufficient electricity, you have the transportation network very good developed, and also all the ports. You have the many ports that can connect the rest of the world.
Meanwhile, local experts emphasize the importance of Chinese experience in the rebuilding process.
These investments will help in building up the infrastructure in many sectors, as the energy sector, the industrial sector, the agriculture sector, as well as some transportation risk projects. You can count on this, on offering new technological transfers, on having new ways of doing things, on employing so many people, like we're talking about thousands of employees, like the one in Teide projects at the Suez Canal axis.
And cooperation has not stopped. There are still agreements in the pipeline for new agriculture and water sanitation projects. Yasser Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Let's head over to Uganda now, where a Kampala-based entrepreneur continues to discover fascinating ways to recycle. Her skill in turning plastic waste to useful products is not only benefiting the environment, it's also increasing employment prospects for young people as well. Here's Leon Senyange with her story.
Chinawataka, a slum in Uganda's capital Kampala. More than 20,000 people live here. Most of their garbage ends up in places like these. But for this team, the straws are treasure, not trash.
We can collect like one sack because we can't find one, like 3 sacks at the same garbage. We usually move collecting.
Straws and plastic bottles make up an estimated 600 tons of plastics consumed in Uganda every day. 73-year-old Benedicta Nanyonga is at the forefront of waste management in this area. Through her organization, the Chinawataka Women's Initiative, She has built a movement to eliminate single-use plastics.
So many people around find that some they do come and we have collected this. In returns, you give a token to her to encourage her or him to see that the plastic is being collected from the place where they are.
The collected plastics, mostly straws, are then turned into sellable merchandise. These are some of the products made here: mats, school bags, and even hand wallets. They are sold to help keep the project running, and there are plans to build a bigger training center so more young people can learn these skills. Harriet Nachaine has been here for 2 months now. She is one of over 6,000 young volunteers that have gained skills from the initiative.
I've got the skill of weaving, because since my childhood I never involved myself in weaving.
While Benedicta has made significant progress, she still faces challenges. The COVID-19 pandemic has kept many trainees away. The lack of proper tools is making work difficult.
Another problem is pressing the straws, because it makes the fingers sometimes to swollen. And also it is a big problem that when we are pressing the straws, it decreases our production.
For Nanyonga, there is no giving up on the fight against plastics. She wants to continue raising public awareness, straw by straw. Leon Sanyange, CGTN, Kampala, Uganda.
This is Africa now, where opposition continues to mount towards a new multi-million-dollar property development in Cape Town. The development could include the African headquarters of online giant Amazon. Indigenous groups, including the Khoi community, believe the development site is sacred land which their ancestors first inhabited over 2,000 years ago. They want it recognized as a World Heritage Site. With more on that report, here's CGTN's Travis Andrews.
The groundwork is being laid for the River Club development site in Cape Town, which will include Amazon's African headquarters. The more than $300 million investment has been welcomed by the city, which believes it could provide a boost to the economy during a pandemic. However, the site is considered sacred to the Khoi and San community, who are reportedly the first inhabitants of the area.
The site that they've chosen is sacred to the Khoi. It's important environmentally. It's a site that has a huge amount of history. It's the site of the first resistance from indigenous peoples against colonial intrusion. It is very, very rich in history, and everybody agrees that it needs to be recognized as a heritage site.
Some within the Khoi community have been particularly vocal towards the development of the site, which will be anchored by Amazon's 70,000 square meters of offices. The River Club is also situated on a sensitive riverine environment, where biodiversity could be threatened by development.
This particular precinct is on a floodplain, a confluence of two sacred rivers. It's known as Tamiro de Kayes, which means the place where the stars gather. It is of a spiritual and metaphysical sacredness to the San and Khoi, and the fact that it is under an immediate and urgent threat of 150,000 square meters of commercial bulk is something that really does concern us.
While the development of this site has already begun, interest groups are set to appeal its approval with a court application, which could take years to finalize. In the meantime, stakeholders opposed to the development believe the economic benefits of the investment can still be attained if the site is moved to a different location.
If this development happened elsewhere, it would probably create more jobs, because this is a very difficult and expensive, complex area to build, so it's going to be very expensive. And for the same amount of money, you could have similar kinds of developments elsewhere, which would generate more jobs.
For now, though, the city hopes the project will create over 5,000 jobs during the construction phase and over 860 when it's completed. The stakeholders opposed to development, though, still plan on making their voices heard. Travis Andrews, CGTN, Cape Town.
Sport news is coming up after the break. Here's what you can expect.